you define a brand? Because I'm interested in both of your perspectives, because a lot of people define branding differently, but define the brand and then what's its role in both marketing and sales?
I define a brand as the sum total of all the customer touches with your company. And so I think about the people that are really the brand ambassadors. If you're a B2B business, that's going to be your salespeople. And a lot of that gets into culture. It gets into, are these people delivering the same brand message, brand promise? That comes down to sales training, comes down to understanding a culture and being able to communicate that.
I mean, I agree with that. I would say, I believe a brand is what people say about you when you're not there. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we're not there to tell people about who we are. It doesn't really matter what we say. It's about what people perceive and their experiences with us, either firsthand or through their perceptions of what it is. So it's really about that perception that they talk about your company.
Welcome to the Turbo Branding Show, where we help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. You'll discover insightful conversations from our powerful guests, founders, CEOs, and advisors for thriving businesses who are sharing how they've successfully built strong brands to help you expand and grow. I'm your host, Sue Kirshner, and today we are welcoming two guests, Mark Repkin and John Fox, to the show. But let's delve into today's episode and turbocharge your brand. So first, John and Mark, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have you both on because I think business owners are going to learn a lot about the power of aligning marketing and sales to make a huge impact on the company's growth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. So let me introduce this dynamic duo. So Mark Repkin is principal of Mark Repkin Associates, a sales consulting and advisory firm dedicated to cultivating sales unicorns, which he defines as extraordinary performers who possess a unique combination of both ambition and drive to their very best. With a wealth of real-world experience, Mark leverages his unicorn principles framework so entrepreneurs and sales leaders can double their revenue while their top sales producers are empowered to double their commissions. He is also the author of the upcoming book, Sales Unicorns, Unveiling the 7 Hidden Secrets of Sales Greatness. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
And now John Fox is the founder of Venture Marketing. With over 20 years in strategic B2B marketing and sales enablement, he has cultivated a passion for driving innovation and growth in visionary-led companies. His strength lies in capturing customer insights and translating them into compelling narratives that really resonate. And he thrives on building relationships, mentoring teams, and bringing fresh perspectives to digital transformation. He's also the co-producer of Hard Knocks podcast. So welcome, John. And did I miss anything for either of you?
No, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So yeah, all right. Well, I can't wait to talk about the formula you both use to help companies double their sales growth and the role that branding plays in all of that. So let's dig in. My first question is, how did you two start working together and what benefit did you see combining your expertise for a client?
Yeah, we started working together. I think it was like 2008, 7. I can't remember, John. It was a long time ago, but I was in a VP of sales position. The company was probably at that time 8-9 million. I don't remember the details on it. And we were looking to hit a growth trajectory. We wanted to really evolve the brand. We needed to make some massive changes. I needed to understand the changing market. And so I brought John in originally on a project basis. And from there, it evolved into a fractional CMO role. And we worked together for a multitude of years together and, helped the company get up to about 25 million.
Wow. Awesome. All right. So, for you both, before we kick this off, how would you define a brand? Because I'm interested in both of your perspectives, because a lot of people define branding differently, but define the brand and then what's its role in both marketing and sales?
I define a brand as the sum total of all the customer touches with your company. And so I think about the people that are really the brand ambassadors. If you're a B2B business, that's going to be your salespeople. And a lot of that gets into culture. It gets into, are these people delivering the same brand message, brand promise. That comes down to sales training, comes down to understanding a culture and being able to communicate that. But I think so much of this is way beyond logos and taglines. It's really about as I said, the sum total of all customer touches with your brand.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark, anything you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I would say I believe a brand is what people say about you when you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we're not there to tell people about who we are. It doesn't really matter what we say. It's about what people perceive and their experiences with us, either firsthand or through their perceptions of what it is. So it's really about that perception that they talk about your company.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's absolutely, I agree with both of those. And yeah, to add to that, it's like, yeah, like you were saying, Mark, the brand resides in the mind of the stakeholder who's interacting with the organization. So what perception did you leave them with based on the communications as well as the experience of working with you, right? So the best you can do as an organization is to define it and manage it, but it still resides in the mind of the people who are interacting with you. So I agree with both of you on that. And then, yeah, and to build on John, what you were mentioning about brand ambassadors, yes, salespeople are absolutely brand ambassadors and need to understand the brand because they're the ones out touching the customers the most. But a lot of companies forget that someone in accounts payable or receivable could be a brand ambassador because that's a touch point too. If they have to call a customer and say, hey, what's going on with this invoice? Or, or customer service, when you call in and someone in tech support has to, speak to a customer, they're all essential to, creating that perception of the brand. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you asked the question of, well, how does it impact sales, right? Wasn't that part of your question?
Yes.
John, you want to take a stab or do you want me to jump in?
Oh, go right ahead.
Well, I think it would affect us both positively and negatively. It's again, if it's a perception of who you are and it is accurate to the way that you actually deploy your services and those touch points that John mentioned, then it makes it a lot easier to get traction quicker as a sales professional. If, however, the brand has a perception that's not as positive as you want, you have a little additional work to do. But that actually, as a sales professional, could be a benefit because it gives you an opportunity to understand why they're perceiving it this way. And it may not always be defending a position. It may be just acknowledging that there is a truth to that and how the organization has made changes to improve their effort to improve that brand and the reputation that they have. So I look at it as kind of neutral, but it's a point of intrigue to get out of the customer.
Excellent. That excellent point. You're right. Absolutely. It is an opportunity to collect market research that the salespeople can say, yeah, like you said, why do you have that perception or what led to that perception? And you also get a chance sometimes to acknowledge it. And it's not necessarily a clean slate, but sales can also take the role of saying, hey, let me tell you a little bit about where we're at now. And I think it might change your mind and go from that. So, all right, perfect. So now, Mark and John, you shared a case story with me that I was super excited about to be able to share with the audience here, all of the business owners. But you shared this case story of how you partnered with John to help a company double their growth. And can you walk me through what was the challenge that the company was facing when they brought you in? And what was the kind of the timeline of how you both got involved and helped them?
Yeah. Well, the spoiler alert is the company is now about 50 million. When we started together, and I started in late 2017, 2018, they were about 18 million.
Wow.
So we went from 18 to 50 million in that period of time. The struggle that the company had is that they wanted to scale. This is a company that is in the painting industry. They're a painting contractor. Their origins started 40 years ago as a residential painting company, and they started over the years to transform into more of a commercial painter. And then when I came on board, they had added in industrial painting. I had been working with them as a sales trainer at that point, and we were working with the sales team, and then we completed the training and I went off in another direction. I got a call one day from the owner and the head salesperson at the time. And they said, we know that we need to go on a growth trajectory. and we just can't do it. We don't know how to go to the next level. What's got us here is not going to take us to the next level. The owner, one of the co-owners, and he's also the CEO, he was sitting in the sales manager chair. They had 6 or 7 salespeople at the time. And, he recognized that he couldn't grow the business if he was just focused with heads down in sales. So there was kind of the 2 issues. We want to grow. We don't know how. And I can't continue to do this. So I need to know somebody I can know and trust to come in. And I came in on a fractional basis. And then from there, I think my recollection of how it all kind of get really going is I had 2 paths that I went on, Sue. Was the first path was I needed to understand the operational side of the business,
Okay.
And know that if they were going to grow, that there was an alignment between the operations team that they really wanted to grow too, because it required, we could sell. That wasn't going to be the issue. The issue is, did we have the capacity to fulfill what we did sell? And I found out that there was a strong desire by the leadership team to really collaborate together. And they had never really had a sales leader that came in before. So they was a little bit hands off initially because they were concerned, like, what are you going to try to do? Mm-hmm. And we very clearly laid the groundwork that we were going to collaborate. And you'll hear that word a couple of times because I think it was instrumental, because the second part of the equation for me was understanding how the marketing and the branding was working and where, how did the industry perceive us? This is a very fragmented space, incredibly difficult to understand who competitors are, lots of small companies. And our problem was that we were doing a really good job at generating leads with the vendor we had at the time. The problem was, were the leads any good? We were generating residential leads, and we had abandoned residential and moved into strictly commercial and industrial type jobs. So those leads became distractions. So it was at that time that I recognized that I couldn't do this sales growth alone. I could tell you about the things I did on the sales end, but what more important, since we're talking about branding, was I asked John Fox to come in with venture marketing. And I said, hey, John, I've got another opportunity for us to collaborate. And John and I set a path, and that was, we were not going to take the traditional approach where sales does its thing, marketing does its thing, and maybe they meet in the middle. We started with the middle and said, you cover this, I'll cover this. And we collaborated back together again. And John came in and used his Trek diagram and these gap analysis to really help us understand the gaps in the sales process that marketing could bridge.
Okay.
And so it was that kind of, origin that started us working together in this company. John, anything you want to color?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And my philosophy has always been that in a B2B setting, marketing really reports to sales, because sales are the hungry mouths that I feed as a marketer.
Mm-hmm.
And the customer insight has to come through the sales team. I don't really have a method of reaching a customer directly because they know the brand through the salespeople. So that was the important thing for us to collaborate and make sure that we understood who was on first base, if you will, with the client, and it was the sales team. That's where my information had to come from.
Okay. No, that's
all these years, John, you're finally telling me that you reported to sales. I didn't have, it would have been a lot of.
Yeah, really. You should have said that up front. You should have said that. But I love, Mark, what you had told me separately in a conversation is that, sales can only get you so far without a strong brand or strong marketing, a strategy kind of a thing. So I like that you obviously recognize that at a certain point, marketing had to come in. And we'll get back to the case story in a second, but I want to build off of something that John just said was, marketing works for sales basically. And I agree with that to a certain extent. But I've seen with the shift, and I want to get your impression on it, with the shift of digital and the internet and being able to access information on your own, we've seen the buyer's journey change, right? Absolutely. It's like it used to be you generate the lead and then sales absolutely takes over. And now it seems like everybody wants to do DIY, buyer journey. So they're looking at reviews, they're on websites, they're reading blogs and case stories and watching videos and all this kind of stuff. And that by the time the salesperson gets involved, it's almost 70%, through that process. And now they just have some final questions and things like that. So knowing that, does marketing play a bigger role? And should it be flip-flopped?
Well, that's probably a much longer debate.
Yes.
But
yes.
Let's just focus on smaller and mid-sized businesses.
Okay.
That's really where my expertise is.
Perfect.
And I really believe that as much as the information tells you that a customer is down this journey of 70%, they're ready to make a decision, it's really the salesperson's responsibility to educate the customer.
Right.
And so there still is lead generation going on. That's really principally what marketing is all about in a smaller business, bringing customers that are perhaps ready to buy, but they still need some communication with the sales team. And so those leads, which is what my responsibility is to get those in front of the sales team, make sure that they are following up on a very fast basis, and more importantly, have the materials that they need in order to help the customer understand the gaps that they have in their own decision process. So to some degree, sure, customers do a lot of online research, and probably the most important thing are the case studies that you mentioned. But where do you think those customer case studies come from? Right. It comes from the sales team. To Mark's point, if we are not collaborating, the sales team's not going to give me diddly squat. And they're not going to trust me with that information. So we have to be working together if that is what our intention is to build a really strong brand, make it something that when the customer does come to our website, they interact with our materials, that it actually resonates with the customer to the point that they're going to pick up the phone and call us.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I agree. I think it absolutely has to be a collaboration, which is why I'm so excited to share the stories. So back to the case story. So once you both started working, separately, together, separately, getting the pieces in place, well, then what happened? What was the outcome?
You want to continue, John? You want me?
No, go right ahead, Mark. You lead.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on the last comment that you guys made, and when we're talking about the collaboration between marketing and sales, when you need a case study, it's not that salespeople don't want to provide it. Sometimes there is some resistance because they're fearful of asking a customer something because, sometimes it could be a disruption to what they're trying to accomplish. But really, most of the time, it's just the time it takes. And the collaboration is, hey, John would ask me, hey, can you just kind of help this person see the benefits of this? And so it was really as a leader's role to help drive that and put it as a priority for people to accomplish. So whereas if there wasn't collaboration, it might be perceived as we had obstinate or stubborn or unwilling sales reps, and that was not the case. Okay. It was just an issue of prioritization. And so in the collaboration, John would help me say, these are things that we needed. So in the pursuit that we were looking for was one of the first projects that we ended up working on was a complete rebranding of the company. We went through and we did a website because we said a lot of the customers are coming to our website and they're not seeing themselves there. So we all of a sudden went with the complete overhaul. The residential buyers that showed up at that site, because Google was still pushing them there, they were saying, that's not me. But the industrial and commercial buyers were looking at it and saying, oh, this is me. This is my place. Yeah. And John helped kind of change that. We did talk about changing the company name at some point. We ended up with some taglines to really emphasize and bring to the surface. And I got to tell you, it was transformational because the sales leads that were coming in, all of a sudden, we're like, wow, these are pinpoint to what we're trying to accomplish. So the website was, I think, one of the first projects, John, outside of the looking at the data. There were so many different things. What was your recollection?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that we needed to clarify is the brand that the company was promising, and that it wasn't residential, and that we wanted to focus on two particular segments. One was industrial, the other was commercial. And so we added those two words to the logo itself. So it was very clear, company name, industrial, commercial, It was very clear the kind of services that we did. And we also provide those as a mini tagline of the 3 key areas, which took a lot of effort internally just to boil down all of our work into 3 segments, if you will. Mm-hmm. So as much as you might look at a brand or a logo, and Sue, you know this, and I'm sure you could go chapter and verse on this, is that you look at this and like, oh, that's something that could be accomplished in a couple of minutes. But, it actually took 6 or 7 months for us to work through this process, bring everybody on board, make sure the sales team was okay with all of the wording that we had, because once we fixed that, we didn't want to go back and change it anytime soon.
Right.
So that is the kind of thing that took collaboration. We did a lot of customer interviews. We had customers help us actually build our website, which again, we did surveys of customers. We ranked how they responded to certain keywords, and then we built the website around that. So the collaboration was with the sales team and then the sales team to the customers. And that's how we ended up with the brand and the promise that we delivered.
I love that. I love involving the customers in the messaging and the website and getting their input throughout the whole process, because ultimately it needs to resonate with them, right? And so you need to hear from them as to whether it's doing its job. So,
right.
Excellent.
Yeah. We also started to work on more data-focused decision-making. We looked at a lot of the data in the CRM that was collected and looking at seeing if it was accurate or not. We also looked at what gaps were going on in the CRM. We analyzed the trade shows that we were attending. And this was not sales doing this. This was really marketing, putting an eye on this and saying, let's take a look at this with a new view. Let's understand where the sales strategy is. How much of your time and energy do you want going after new business? And how much do you want to offer going after expansion business? Mm-hmm. And it was with that pieces of information that we could then use the data to make better decisions. And we started to put our energies into things that were going to drive the sales strategy. Because at the end of the day, John and I had the same scorecard. It was going to be the top. He was top line revenue. I was kind of that, but I was also had a gross profit goal. So I needed to make sure I was driving towards profitable customers, not just the customers that were driving top line. And so we were able to, and John brought on part of his team was the data analytics side was amazing, because they looked at the data from a marketing lens, saw things that we on the sales side didn't even pay attention to. We just glimpsed over.
Yeah.
So it was really important in that. Those are kind of some of the top level things that I think we hit.
Excellent. So you mentioned working with operations as part of one of the first things you did and things like that, but what else needed to change at the company to get this kind of accelerated growth?
Well, I'm going to use an overworked word, Sue, but it's culture. Okay. There is a culture within the culture, and the sales culture needed to be redefined. Because if you think about it, we were under the leadership of the owner who was driving sales. And it was a very entrepreneurial company. And so getting to a certain level of growth, they could still operate that way. Now we were going to have to start putting in systems and processes, and we needed to change the culture. We needed to cultivate, and I'm not talking about, it did have ripples effect throughout the organization, but my focus was really on the sales department. Mm-hmm. We got rid of some high producers that were not culture fits. Yeah. And because they weren't representing the brand that we wanted to do. I believe culture is simply defined as the way we do things here. And the way we do things here there was inconsistencies with the values that we had as an organization and the way that some of the people were conducting themselves. And it's systemic, because if you sell a large deal and you are not an engaged salesperson and seeing it all the way through, when you hand it off to your colleagues that have to do the operational outputs on these things, that is not going to work. So we actually got rid of some, high talent, but not culture fits. We removed the underperformers. We revised the way that we structured our sales meetings. We completely introduced new selling methodologies. We recognized that we needed new blood in the business, and we wanted to hire really high talented people. Well, in order to hire really the best people, you got to look at it from the salesperson's perspective. And their question is, well, why would I want to sell here?
Right.
Because the best salespeople can go sell anywhere because they're in high demand.
Right.
So we needed to make sure that we took on a branding and marketing view on why sell here. If you have a choice, we've got something good. And we had a lot of assets that were not being told. So I sat down with John and we built out a roadmap and we pioneered the creation, what I would call of a sales academy that was designed to attract and nurture top sales talent by providing the newer people with a roadmap towards success, and high performers, we're giving them coaching and support outside of management. And that is something that they really wanted. And so we started to create visuals. We created a logo around this academy, and it really became something that our recruiters used and told us. I think, John, we got a call from Jane and she said, "This is amazing. You guys are making my job so much easier," because there was a problem, Sue, and that was our promise that we were making. It was perceived by the candidates as too good to be true.
Oh.
But when we put it on paper and we gave substance to it, for the first time, it became real and tangible. And that was something that John and I just kind of strategized on. And then he went out and deployed with his graphics team and the copywriters, and they came back and they said, "Here you go." And I'm like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah. No, I love that. Creating the brand under the brand, under the umbrella kind of a thing, and emphasizing that the sales training is so important that it deserved a brand. I like that. So some of these decisions seems like they're big decisions that the owner, the CEO, management had to make. How do you recognize when a company is willing to make those kinds of changes, willing to embrace the journey or the process that has to take place for a transformation like this to happen?
Yeah, I can give you an example of that. And it comes down to a branding in your field, Sue. And it wasn't something that owners were looking to change. But I had a fixed budget to work with, like any marketing person would have, and had to determine what's the best use of those resources. And at the time, we had 3 brands operating in the company. And so one was more focused around flooring, if you will. The other one was about cleaning, and the other was around painting services. So we were splitting our money across these, and they were separate brands in the company. So I wanted to make a plausible argument that these should be merged or they should be eliminated. And so that was a conversation that we had to have. But these were kind of the owner's baby. They came up with these brand names.
Sure.
And so what we ended up doing is we ran Google AdWords campaigns, same context, same concept, same content in the ad, but the URLs were different, and they were to bring them to one of those 3 landing pages, and the landing pages were branded to each one of those 3. And after a few months, we had the data that showed that one brand actually had much stronger pull than the other 2. So I had data now that we could sit down and say, now what should we do? We're not going to spend more money. There's no way we're going to be able to do that. So let's decide that we're going to shut down these older brands that we know and love. We can bring them back someday if we want. We're not going to get rid of the URLs or the domain names, but we are going to just focus on this one.
Okay.
And that's what we ended up doing. And that story is something that then carried through. And that's when we added the taglines and so forth.
Yeah. And the logic that you used was when John positioned this with them, there was no emotion involved. It was simply, and there was no pitch either. It was, here's the data. What do you think we should do? And the answers became clear. It wasn't us pushing an agenda because we think. Well, the data proved the point.
Right.
Excellent. Excellent. No, I love that. Yeah, because how can you argue against that? I hope you enjoyed this episode. For more on how sales and marketing working together accelerates your growth, tune in.